Okay, good evening, everybody. Hope everyone's okay. Hope everyone's well. Looks like the microphone's working, and I remember to press the live button so we can crack on. Yeah, what we can talk about tonight? Well, I mean, price has not really been doing what we would have liked it to have done, obviously, but I don't actually think there's anything necessarily to worry about at the moment. There's not much to get excited about either, I'll admit. So we'll have a look at where price action is. We are starting to see some rumblings of the likes of the United States government opening, which, people are suggesting it's going to be this week. I have a feeling that that is going to bring some initial optimism to all markets, which will hopefully lift up Bitcoin. We'll go over that later. People are also talking about this tariff windfall, payout, whatever you want to call it, that Trump is introducing, $2,000 per citizen. And people are getting excited about that because it's starting to sort of bring back memories of 2020, 2021. So again, we'll have a look at how that can help Bitcoin and see whether or not it's going to lift us out of this slump. I'll quickly go over some stuff that's come out for the Bank of England because people were talking about it in Discord today. So I will cover that very quickly. Might make news section a little bit heavy, but I'll try and break it up as best I can. We'll have a look at where Bitcoin's been. We'll have a look at where we think it may be going. We'll dive into a couple of questions that have been asked. We'll hit up some TA, particularly on Bitcoin and BitTensor, and then we'll just go from there. Let's try not to drag it out for too long. And with that being said, let's just jump into it. So here we are, 3-day time frame at the moment. Top chart is looking at Bitcoin. I'll blow it up onto the bigger screen so we can see a little bit better. And you can kind of see, move my head out of the way, sort of where my, I don't know, lack of excitement or fear kind of sits. Bottom white line that we can see there, 101,775. We've not actually closed below that since early May, and we didn't, despite two candles, about a week's worth of heavy falling. Both of those candles actually managed to close above that level, which we're going to see later on is above some key levels on the weekly time frame. And we kind of find ourselves above it right now. Now, is that current candle the candle that I really want to see? The candle formation with only 4 hours to go before it closes on the 3-day time frame? Not necessarily, no. We have got a particularly strong high test there in a falling market up to a level of previous support and resistance and a sharp sell-off from it. And to be perfectly honest with you, that candle was at 107,000 today. So that wick has formed today. If I just draw that sort of horizontal line in and around where we wicked it from, you can kind of see on a 3-day time frame what I'm talking about. We've got candle closing, opening earlier on this month. In September, it's retested off that. I'm going to have to get rid of this one here just because it's going to confuse matters for now. We can kind of see it's been wicking down and been held by it there. So a pretty strong level for it to move up to. We'll see on the daily time frame, but today's action has me concerned because we were starting to make some steady, slow progress gains out of the weekend. But unfortunately, this is what happened. Now, it is a bank holiday in America at the moment. I think the markets are still open. I don't really know if the banks are like we have in the UK. That may have something to do with where we are. And obviously, I mentioned, and we'll go into in a moment, about the US government being shut down for quite a substantial amount of time. Maybe that's starting to actually cause some uncertainty that we will have a look at. But just on the 3-day time frame, not exactly the best picture. But as long as we can stay above that 101,755, let's just call it 101,000 for cash, I'm all right. I'm all right now. Looking at Bitcoin dominance, there's not really, again, too much to say. We're still sloping upwards. It's still of my opinion that we're going to continue to move upwards. Yes, we have had a bit of a sell-off over the last week. And I admit that this is starting to curve a little bit. And hey, if that's the case, and we will have to accept that we may actually see a breakdown there, which is going to be great for us on our altcoin bags. But my view actually is that Bitcoin is still going to find its move before the majority of altcoins do, particularly Ethereum, which hasn't been doing very well. Speaking of Ethereum, we'll have a look at the total two, which includes Ethereum, so everything bar Bitcoin. And we can kind of see this week it fell down to that $1.25 trillion level, key level this year. That's been, to be fair to it, it has bounced off that. And altcoins have done better than Bitcoin over the last week. Hence why we can actually see that this, although it is a high test, we've got 2 green candles in a row. It's starting to move upwards, but it is, we haven't broken a clear level that we need to really get excited about. That level for me is going to be round about 1.45 trillion dollars. It's kind of actually where we wicked to in the early hours of this morning before coming back down. But just a quick overlay of those two, Bitcoin and total 2, similar candle formation, but in a different structure. But they are still both trending down. So not too exciting there. And then back into BitTensor, and I mean, it just feels like we've suddenly lost the last 2 weeks of price action there. We are back stuck in this range, mid 300s. We've been here plenty of times before. The only good side of it really was 360 was a level that we couldn't seem to break through. Thankfully, right now, 360 seems to be a level that's actually holding us up. But in terms of, these trend lines we've been looking at, we're kind of sitting in the middle of this at the moment. There's no real clear direction of which way we're going to go. And whilst I'd like to say we'll wait to see what Bitcoin happens, to be fair to BitTensor, except for this last week, it's actually done very well through the month of October. And it kind of has been doing its own thing. I know people are talking about the halving and everything else maybe leading up to the price there. We'll have to wait and see on that, in my personal opinion. But with Bitcoin struggling and altcoins not popping, I don't see how any movement up on BitTensor is going to be sustained. But hey, we will have a look at the charts in a bit more detail later on and try and find out where all of that sits. Okay, I told you I was going to cover some news, and I'll try and get through this as quickly as I can. I forgot to say, if you do have any questions about anything I either say now or anything that's popped into your head, just drop them in the chat and I will try and answer them as best as I can. So we have started to see news coming out from the United States yesterday and even actually over the weekend that we're looking to maybe end this government shutdown. This government shutdown has actually lasted 7 weeks. I think we're 43 days into the shutdown, longest ever shutdown of the United States government. So without trying to go into the nth degree of it, obviously they kind of need a bipartisan agreement on effectively raising the debt ceiling so that we can open up the government and people in the air traffic control and park rangers and everything else can all get paid. There has been some sort of legislation that's gone through the Senate, I believe. It kind of needs, I think it's 60 votes or 60% of the votes. You'll have to forgive me on that. I think it has got through that, and then it probably has to go through some other steps. But ultimately, it needs to be signed off by the president himself. He has suggested, I don't know where the article is here, that he would back the deal that is currently being proposed. It just kind of needs to be presented to him. You've got to take everything that Donald Trump says with a little pinch of salt. I saw an interesting news article from Farage saying, maybe not take everything he says literally, but take it seriously. Like, yes, he likes to embellish and hyperbole and all that, but so you can't take the words literally. But the whole sentiment of what he says is normally the truth. And if he has said that he's going to back a deal, he's wanting to end this as quickly as he can too. But going back to here, crypto could get a relief as US Senate cuts deal. I mean, I read through this article with, just absolute delight, thinking, well, what is the logic behind that sentiment? And apparently it's because the last time the government shut down between end of 2018 and beginning of 2019, Bitcoin rallied by 2.66%. Now, of course, any of you who were around at the end of 2018, you'll know that was the bottom of the bear market. $3,100 was hit, and yeah, by the time we got to April, we were already at $5,000, $6,000. So whether or not that was because the government reopened or not, I will leave to your imagination. But the bottom was already in, and we were actually already climbing out of it, is what I will say from that. But that's how they like to spin that here. Interestingly, try and spin the sort of narrative that because the government is looking to reopen, institutions are suddenly going to get excited again, not just about the current ETFs that we have, but actually the approval of outstanding ETFs, Solana and XRP and all of the other ones. I'm not really getting too excited about those. Back in the day when we were waiting for the Bitcoin ETF and Ethereum ETF, we were tracking those on a almost monthly basis because they were important. I don't feel the love for some of the other ones here, but in terms of institutional excitement about the government reopening, I don't get that sentiment looking at Bitcoin here. Now, for those of you who've watched enough of these, you'll know canary in the coal mine is going to be BlackRock. Kind of mixed bag in buys and sells at the moment the last 3 weeks. I can take it or leave it with what we see there. But yesterday, it's like everybody forgot to either buy or sell. I can't remember the last time we saw a figure as low as 1.2 million, whether it be red or black. Today, the data's not in. As I mentioned, it's a bank holiday. I had a look on BlackRock. Nothing has transpired on BlackRock today. Kind of makes me think that maybe these businesses are closed, but we'll find out in a few hours' time. But I expect that to remain zeros across the board. So I don't really see where that floodgate is on the news of this reopening. I didn't bother looking at Ethereum's earlier on today, but I can't imagine it's going to look much better. No, stacks are red, really. Little smattering of black, but no floodgates necessarily open. It's just another classic kind of, let's just try and sell a bit of hype to try and go through there. And whilst I'm not trying to ignore it, I think it's there. Now, this has just become my new source of news, really, and that's Polymarkets, because they will bet on absolutely anything on here. And one of the ones they've got is, when will the government shut down? The predicted date for it to be, shutdown end, the predicted date is going with the 14th, which is the end of this week, I suppose. You can see 95% of the votes currently sitting between the 12th and the 15th, which is over $3 million worth. Are buying into that time frame. Obviously, I'm sure the US government don't care about Polymarkets and their bets, but seems to be where sentiment currently sits with this. Now, I just sort of want to mention that, why is it important that we get the government back open? For the first few weeks, you know, the markets didn't really seem to care at all. Matter of fact, 5 days into the shutdown, Bitcoin made an all-time high, 6th of October or whenever it was, 126,000. Since then, we've kind of lost, 17% of the value, 20% of the value, wherever it is, and we've got there. And the reality of it is, it's data, in my opinion, because early on when the government shut down, most of the data that we have to hand is fresh and it's relatively accurate. The longer that we go on, and financial forecasting mechanisms such as jobs, CPI, etc., that inform things like the FOMC funding rate, that data just becomes very stale, quite out of date, and hard to really justify. And we have seen CPI, I don't have Forex Factory open, let's just get open. We have seen the likes of Forex Factory, not Forex Factory, CPI data be delayed, jobs data be delayed. These are some of the key financial information that is used by the Federal Reserve to try and determine where we are in terms of an economy, the royal we, because we're talking about the United States here. But we've got tentatively that the CPI data is due out this week. The reality of it is, I'm sure behind the scenes someone is trying to collate it as best they can. But if the government doesn't open tomorrow, it's unlikely that we're going to get that data on Thursday, pushing it back to Friday. And again, if we end up opening Thursday or Friday, it's probably going to be next week that we end up getting some of this data. And these are big, pieces of financial information which help provide confidence or nervousness, whatever, around the traditional markets, which, as we know, risk on is going to affect crypto markets. So that to me is why it's such an important thing. And that's to me that if we do get a confirmation that the markets are going to open, tomorrow, Thursday, Friday, whatever it's going to be, I believe regardless of how the data turns out, that will provide an initial, drive of optimism, shall we say, to the markets. It could well be short-lived, but people are going to suddenly realize that actually we can get back onto risk on assets, whether we're buying, longing or shorting or whatever we want to do them, because we're going to start to get fresh data. And I think that's going to help to move the markets. Obviously, when we start to get things like jobs data actually coming out rather than the guesstimates that we've been doing, that may change matter. And that obviously may impact where we're going to be in a month's time for the final federal rate cut of the year. I've mentioned it, I might as well bring it up if I can find it. Currently, the thought process is that there will be a rate cut once it loads. 65% believe we're going to get 25 basis points rate cut, with about 34% thinking that the rate is going to remain the same. You've got to take all of this with a pinch of salt. Let a couple of pieces of financial data, economic data come out, and then we'll see how this flips. There are actually some people on the federal committee suggesting a 50 basis point rate cut. Anyway, we'll leave that to when we get closer to the time. But for me, that is why actually that's quite an important thing for us to be looking at. Okay, very quickly, I just want to talk about this Bank of England consultation paper that's come out about stablecoins, because I think there's actually a bit of a misnomer about this, certainly from what I've read into it. So yes, for the past couple of years, the Bank of England has effectively said, we want to start regulating cryptocurrency. We want to start regulating stablecoins. We're going to come up with a way of doing that. And they initially put out a principle kind of paper to try and sort of like test the waters. That was consulted with sort of industry experts, etc. And then they've come back and they have released another proposed framework for consultation. And within that, the two things that seem to be getting everybody's knickers in a twist is that individuals will only be able to hold £20,000 worth of stablecoins, and businesses 10 million. There are exceptions and exceptions to that, but that's the general gist of it. However, and I think I'm fairly confident in this, most of the things that I've read from serious people who actually are in the industry rather than just on X tweeting about it, when you actually have a look at the paper, which sadly I did, here it is, I'll send the link in Discord if you're interested in it. There's two things that sort of really spring to mind. The first one is, I mean, it's best summarized in table A. I won't bother digging it out, but the overview of how sterling denominated stablecoins issued in the UK would be regulated. Okay, two things there. So we're actually talking about stablecoins issued by the Bank of England. Okay, we don't know what they're going to be called yet. When it was CBDCs, everyone was thinking it was just going to be called Bitcoin. But ultimately, this is going to be a GBP variant of a stablecoin. Okay, so yes, they may restrict it to £20,000, but they're not restricting stable coins to £20,000. You as an individual, as I understand it, can still own $250,000 worth of USDT and $250,000 worth of USDC. Okay, that's not what they're coming out for you. The second thing from this is, if we go down to this bit, and again, we scroll down to holding limits. So these are the holding limits here that it talks about, and that 20,000 and that 10 million. And the reason that they've done that is, it says here, the bank considers it likely that, and then this is the key bit, at least during a transition, e.g. or i.e. temporary, limits will be needed for stablecoins using that payment system to mitigate financial stability risks stemming from large and rapid outflows of deposits from the banking sector. Okay, so what they're concerned about and why they're setting up these limits is, what they don't want is Joe Bloggs to just suddenly move his life savings from the banking sector, which granted, it's not exactly in pound coins and notes, it's going to be on a spreadsheet somewhere, and just move it wholesale straight away across to Bitcoin or whatever it's going to be. And that caused some sort of run on the banks or some sort of, like, you know, concern within the banking sector. That is what they're looking at these limits for. And I must admit, when it first came out and this paper wasn't here, I kind of jumped to the, wait a second, they're restricting us as holding stable coins, you know, overreach again by the governments and the financial sector, blah, blah, blah. But if you take this on its word, this seems to be actually what they're looking at there. Now, again, you know, this is only a proposal, so they could say, no, it's permanent limits. I don't know. I'm just reading into this. And, you know, my view is, whatever they call this stable coin, in my mind, it is still a CBDC. You know, it's still a centralized bank distributed coin or currency, just in another name. They're just calling it stable coin. So I think, you know, it feels like we will automatically have to mitigate over this, whether it takes 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. That is the way this is going. I do think stable coins are here to stay. And those of you who have had my back and watched a few of these Avenger calls, you know my feelings on the likes of Circle as an investment, etc., which is just the US version of what's going on here. But interestingly, you know, the analogy we used to use was, oh, how would they get people over to the CBDC? Oh, well, if you move to Bitcoin, we'll eradicate all your debt or whatever. Actually, this kind of suggests that that isn't going to be possible, because they don't want to be wiping out the current financial system, because that's built up on debt, and those companies need all that sort of layers of understanding, debts and creditors and all of that to sort of provide the, I suppose, the house of cards that our current financial system is. So I'm delving into the weeds here. I'm going to move on from it, but that is my understanding of that paper. Please, if you are still concerned or interested in it, have a read of this, have your understanding of it, and then just let me know what you think. I might be completely wrong. I didn't read it all, I'll be honest. It's quite lengthy, but it is there for you to have a look at. And then just that final bit I want to cover before we get into some price action, but I will try and throw out some charts here, at least to make it a bit more interesting. So a couple of days ago, I mean, he has announced this in the past, but Donald Trump tweeted on Truth Social, whatever it's called, that he is going to be providing US citizens a dividend, windfall, whatever you want to call it, of $2,000 because the tariffs have been so successful. And that's kind of got people very excited, as I mentioned in the introduction, because it's bringing back the stimulus checks kind of mentality, what happened back in sort of mid to end of 2020. And they're kind of putting those two scenarios together and going, bull market's back on. Here we go. We'll have a chart in a moment to show you how much it moved up from then. And people are sort of putting those two together. And initially, this sounds fantastic. Brilliant. What Donald Trump is effectively saying is that tariffs have been so successful and we've managed to make so much money from this that we can actually start to give this back to the hardworking citizens of the United States. Now, he has put a few caveats on that. So the dividend of at least $2,000 per person, but not including high income people. So anyone in low income, medium income. Hasn't stipulated whether or not it's just for adults or whether or not there will be some sort of benefit to children as well. And that was the case with the stimulus checks. Some of them were a little bit less than what you get if you were an actual taxpayer adult in the United States. But he has come out and said this. And then he also then went on to tweet afterwards to say, it's so successful, actually, that when we have money left over from these tariffs, we're going to use that to pay off our debt. Debt standing at 37 trillion. I think it's actually 38 trillion. And he's come out and said there's all money left over from the $2,000 payments made to low and middle income US citizens from the massive tariff income pouring into our country from foreign countries, which will be substantial, will be used to substantially pay down national debt. Thank you for your attention on this matter, President DOT. Okay, all sounds great. It does sound great. So let's have a look at why people are getting excited with that. And this is it. So what we can see here is just a chart, Bitcoin weekly time frame. And what I've done is I've sort of chat GPT'd it, I must admit, but I sort of questioned, what were the stimulus checks? When did they roughly occur? What was the general value of those? And there were 3 instances during the COVID crisis, whatever I was going to call it a campaign, but whatever you want to call it, in which stimulus checks were provided. There was one in mid-April for about $1,200, one in December of 2020 for about $600, and then another one in about sort of March, April of 2021 for about $1,400, roughly $3,200 per citizen. And the numbers are a little bit vague, but about $1 trillion worth of stimulus checks were provided to effectively try and help people out. The thought process behind that was people actually were degens and went, let's put that into some risk on assets and see what can happen. And obviously people did. Let's not get carried away with that. But this is hard to really gauge what the impact of it was. Like an individual check of $1,200, how does that really impact the market? So what I thought I'd try and do is if I overlaid, if I can find it. I had drawn arrows. They are not there anymore, which is frustrating, to try and symbolize where we were from beyond. So this is Bitcoin as a market cap. So we had that first stim check around about April time of 2020. And at the time, and rough figures here, so I'm not doing it to the day, Bitcoin's market cap was around about $115 billion. Then we had one in December, and Bitcoin's market cap was $300 billion. So in that time, the market cap had doubled. And then we had another one, which is in December, and we were looking at around about $800 billion. So almost 2.5 times, just a little bit over, I suppose, from that move up there. And this is what people are getting excited about. Well, wait a second. If a stimulus check of $1,200 can move the market, and at the time, Bitcoin went from 5,000 to 30,000, then we're going to likely see the same. But the point I suppose I'm trying to make is, even if people do decide to take that $2,000 solely go straight into Bitcoin, we have got a different size market cap at the moment. And whilst of course there is some multiplier that you can add to that, it's not going to have the grand effect that we think it had previously. I'm not expecting Bitcoin's market cap or price per token to double overnight, because suddenly we're talking about a market cap of $2 trillion currently at the moment, moving to $4 trillion solely off the back of however many billions worth of dollars of money put into the market. And we'll have a look at those rough figures in a moment. So we can expect, with a multiplying factor, to see hundreds of billions of dollars likely added to the market off the back of sentiment alone. But hundreds of $billions in a market cap where we're already at $2 trillion does not equate to doubling the value of Bitcoin. In fact, we're at $2 trillion at the moment. When we were at 126,000, we were $300 billion higher than we currently find ourselves. And so that's when we kind of have to dig a little bit into what Donald Trump has actually said and how this translates into some actual money. Then we can kind of get a feel for whether or not this is really going to rejuvenate the market. And the reality of where we find ourselves is probably 3 or 4 issues. Firstly, there's no specific law, legislation, or whatever that has been put in place to gift $2,000 to individuals in the United States. Now, that law can come about very quickly, absolutely, but without that law in place, it legally can't happen. And so therefore, we don't know when that's going to happen. So first and foremost, we don't have a date for when it's going to happen. He hasn't committed to a date. For as far as we know, this could be well into next year before we see those checks come out. Also, he hasn't told us if it's a one-off payment, if it's an actual cash payment, if it's what do I want to say? A reduction of your tax bill or something like that. So we don't really know what that $2,000 actually is. Is it something that people can just withdraw straight away and use, or something that's going to be put into some sort of account where it gets held for a certain amount of time? I don't know the answer to that, and he hasn't come on it. The next is, well, what is the threshold? So he said it's low and medium income, but we don't know what the cutoff point of that is. And if we don't know what the cutoff point that is, we actually don't know how much this is going to cost. So how do we work that out? We can't, but if we just say that 150 million people are eligible for it, then that's going to cost $300 billion. I've just pulled that number out of the air, but I've done that so that we can try and understand, well, how much revenue has been brought in from tariffs? And if that is the figure we need, then where can we go from it? And this is where I go back to, you kind of got to take what President Trump says seriously, but maybe not literally, because he will refer to trillions of dollars have been brought in from tariffs, and trillions of dollars may well be brought in. But today, the best numbers that we can go on is the US Treasury claims there's about $195 billion worth of tariff duties. So $195 billion worth of tariff duties falls short of that $300 billion that I use as a fictitious number, which again says, well, do we now have to wait until we hit that level, $300 billion? And then when we do, that's when it will come in. And bear in mind, these tariffs have been going from pretty much the start of the year, well, March time. So we've had about 7 months worth. Oh, do we have to wait another 6 or 7 months before we hit that? And if that's the case, we're talking about the middle of next year. And even then, is that the kicker that provides those money? So I think there's still a lot of questions that need to be answered. Of course, assuming that this is a stimulus check-esque venture, then yes, I would expect, I've just realized that's where the chart was. Then I would expect this to have a positive impact on risk-on assets, because we are all degens, and of course we're going to try and recreate Wall Street bets all over again, and that will just have a multiplier effect on the market. However, we just lack details. All we really have at the moment are a handful of tweets that says this thing is coming, nothing else. And so we can't really just go, he's announced it, that's it, the bull market it has been restored. I think that is just naive of us to think that. And actually, you could argue if this is going to take 6 or 7 months to play out, then what is more likely is that we may see a market correction because of a recession or whatever. And then this is the type of, cash injection which is going to help pull us out of that kind of slump that we will see. And that's not something that's weeks away. That can take months, quarters to play itself out. So I think we just got to take that one, unfortunately, with a pinch of salt. And of course, I went to Poly Markets, and they were like, what will Trump create his tariff dividend by March 31st? 22% say yes, and not much confidence there. You can actually have a look at it for the end of the year. Only 7% chance. It's Poly Markets, take it with a pinch of salt. But it certainly doesn't seem to be the best place for us right now. I think it's just one we'll wait and see, and we'll see how it impacts us. Any of you guys that are based in America and have any more up-to-date information on that, I'd love to hear it. But yeah. Okay, well, we'll move away from the news. So let's have a look at Bitcoin's price action and 12-hour time frame at the moment. For those of you who are new or can't remember, yes, we do have some Fibonacci lines on here, but the yellow boxes are liquidation heat maps just overlaid onto this. We're kind of sat in no man's land at the moment. But if I can just draw your attention to price action that fell down. So last week, we sort of saw this down to that 100K kind of battle. But just notice 99,000, just shy of 99,000 buyers stepped in. We didn't get down to this level of liquidation, this long liquidation level based at 98 to 97,000, which has been there since May of this year. And buyers have stepped in and defended that one for now. And this is the first chart I'll show you that kind of gives you that sort of, we had this bounce down, double bottom, lower time frames, definitely a double bottom, climbing back out of there. And had today not have happened, this was looking like a fairly decent recovery, but we have just rolled over. We spiked up in the early hours this morning, as I said, to 107,000. We're now sitting $5,000 lower than we were at that stage, 102,800. And it really doesn't feel like there's much holding us back from at least retesting 101,000. But I would argue, when we have a look at some other charts, probably that psychological level in and around 100,000. Now, that's not a problem, as I said. We are just in a period where I'm not particularly nervous or concerned right now, nor am I necessarily excited. We are just in a period where we have to wait for the chart to give us the answer. We can try and pre-guess which way we think it's going to go, but it could ultimately end up costing us should we do that. So we're just sort of in a wait and see kind of moment. And if I just move you on to this chart down here. So Bitcoin weekly time frame at the moment, and this is what I was sort of looking at. If I can just zoom in a bit. As I said, 50 EMA red line here throughout the time of any bull market. It is our indicator whether or not we're still in it. And on plenty of occasions, not just in this cycle, but in previous cycle, the 50 EMA has come into play. We have retested it and we have bounced from it, just confirming that we are still within that bull market. Last week, you can see, so don't include the candle right now, it's 5.5 days left to go on that one. We came down, we wicked into it, but before the candle closes, we actually clearly bounced away from it. And to be honest with you, that is a concern for me, not as in the market's over, but I just think this gap still needs to be taken, because actually when you look at previous ones, the market closes and reopens on the 50 EMA. So until we actually see that, I just feel that we're just leaving this open for the market makers, and we're actually going to make that move back down. And when I started talking about this to myself today, we were up at 104,000 and we were already starting to make that move down. So I just foresee that we will end up coming back down here. And again, previous times, we don't just hit it once. We generally come back and tap it a couple of times before we sign ourselves a bounce. So we may well just experience this move down. We've got to embrace that happens. We've also got to embrace that we may still spike through it, which again is fine. It's just what we do in and around that. But right now, that's what I'm looking at. And the reality of that then sits is, if I can just zoom out a little bit so you can kind of see from previous cycles. Oops, I zoom out. Sorry, I'm having a bit of a disaster. Let's get rid of that What do we need to happen? Well, the blue line you can see there's the 20 EMA, and it sounds fairly obvious to say this, but ultimately we've got to clear that 20 EMA for us to confirm that the bull market is still on. That currently sits at the moment at 109,000, which again, going back to charts like this first one, it's not where I originally put it. Tell you what, let's just I want to just do that. Open anyway. Sorry, just going about the houses here. Here we go. Because that 109,600 level has been incredibly important to us. We've had this line on our chart since May, and it is very important. It just so happens, though, that from a weekly time frame, not a 3-day time frame, that is where the 20 EMA currently sits. And I've lost which chart I was on, this one here. So we've got to try and break that level. And until we do that, then we can't really say that the bull market's going to resume, because we have a look at sort of previous examples. So I'm just making sure you can see it on the screen. You can do. 2022 market, we lose the 50 EMA, we come back, and it's the 20 EMA that bats us back down, confirms to us, you know what, guys, we're out of the bull market. Whereas then when we get into the bull markets back in 2023, we come down and retest the 50 EMA, but we break through the 20, we continue that climb up, and strong climbs up when we do. Break through the 20 EMA, and then a strong move up. And there are periods where we just bounce in and around the 50 and the 20 EMA until we make that decision. And I can't tell you which way that decision is going to go, but if we can't clear the 20 EMA and then we start to lose the 50 EMA, we know what the answer is. The top was back in October and we were just all wrong. We break through that 20 EMA, we can see a next leg up, and I believe we would take the all-time high and move on from that one. So that's where it currently sits, and that's why I can't really get excited nor nervous yet. I expect us to come back down and retest this $100,000 level, $101,000 level, which ties in with the 50 EMA. So not particularly nervous. I see that happening, but I can't get excited, because unless we break 109,500 or whatever the level exactly is, then we're just going to be sitting in this range. So we just have to suck it up. We have to try and make the best of whatever we find ourselves in, and just work with it. And it is a game of patience. It has been. And for those of you that have been in RT a while, for this cycle, we've already done 3 years of waiting. We can do a little bit longer to get through it. Oops. Sentiment in the market still in the toilet. 26 still fully in fear. This is an anomaly. We shouldn't be in this level of fear for this long in the peak bit of the bull market. This is something just to dwell on and wonder whether or not we just need to revisit our mental model, whatever you want to call it, in terms of where we're at. But this doesn't seem right that we're staying in it. We've talked about that for a while, and we'll keep on monitoring it as we do. Right, quickly answer a couple of RT questions, and then we'll get properly into the charting. So off the back of that stablecoin discussion we were having in Discord, Taylor said, I guess you'll already be touching on this, which is what I did, the Avenger call, but could you properly help spell out what we think this means so far, and also the pros of setting up a business account rather than a personal account? So I think I've spelled out what I think it means. Also, bear in mind 2027, so a couple of years till it comes into play. So if this is your one and done cycle, you'll be able to deal with it before that happens. In terms of how that might impact you setting up a business or a personal account, I don't think it does. To be perfectly honest, if that's all you're thinking about is how does that stablecoin paper framework regulation affect whether or not I should go for a business account or a personal account, it doesn't matter. In my opinion, it doesn't. You're setting up a business account or a personal account on an exchange to trade cryptos, not to hold the Bitcoin. There may be some tax implications in there, and it's a caveat and a cop-out maybe to say speak to your accountant about it. Look, you open up a personal account, there are benefits to doing that in terms of when you bore it back in, subject to CGT, whether or not, or income tax, depending on how much you do it. Whereas a business account goes back into the business, but bear in mind there's corporation tax you need to pay on that. And when you give it back to yourself, there's a dividend tax as well. Maybe you might have done some director's loans, which might have helped pay for that. I don't know, right? And that's why you got to speak to your accountant, which best works for you and how you do it. I'm not sure the way I set it up was the best, but it is the way I set it up. I have a business account that deals with business side of cryptos and personal account from personal side. And I've always kept them separate. The tax is not easy. tax reporting, but it is easier than me now trying to merge them together. So that's currently where I sit. In terms of like on ramping and off ramping, which is where the conversation kind of went after that, it's tough. It is tough out there. Every bank seems to be different for individuals, and you just got to try and find something that works. The only thing I can really suggest is if you find a system that works, go and find 2 more that work, because the next time you really need to use an anchor, it might be shut down to you. I use Swissborg. I've used them now for about 4 or 5 years with Barclays. That's worked very well for me. I had to have like a 45-minute interrogation from the Ford office a few years ago. And after that, they kind of just got off my back. I've been doing it through my Barclays account for 9 years, just about 8, 9 years. So I kind of think they've got a history of that, and they've seen money going in both directions. So maybe they're just like, all right, he's proven enough. But I also don't rest on the laurels that avenue is always going to be open to me. And something that Simon's mentioned a couple of times before, but he also reiterated today, was Strike. I have a Strike account as well. I've not actually used this one yet. I've just set it up as an avenue to do that, in which I will ultimately send crypto to there, convert it into pounds, and then send it back. Whichever way you do it, bear in mind, if you can't get direct from an exchange to your bank and you have to go through an off-ramp, you are going to be paying extra in fees and transaction costs and all of that. So you've got to factor that in. But there is unfortunately no cheap way of doing it right now. And just that's ultimately where you have to stick with. I didn't log on in the end, so don't need that. So yeah, so that's where I currently sit for that one. Have a drink. I've got a feeling this next question might need a drink. So Mo has asked me, and whether he's done this just put me on the spot, but he's put question for tonight's call. You held off getting into subnets as it was an entirely new market RT would be exposed to. Have you any further thoughts or ideas on potentially allocating a portion into alpha tokens? Like to hear your thoughts either way. Thanks. So yeah, I am not in alpha token play. I don't do that. I have BitTensor, and that's where I've left it. And you're right, when alpha tokens first came out, they were new. They felt incredibly risky. We were having new subnets made every day, and we had an incredibly low level of liquidity. And all the prices just seemed to be dropping. That was all they ever did. And so I steered clear of them. I then just didn't bother really getting involved, researching them, understanding them. For those of you that are active on Discord, you will know that I'll rarely ever comment in subnets because I just don't know what's going on. I have no idea what the Docs wallet looks like. When people start talking about subnet for 71, like I'm supposed to know what that is, I'm just not there. And that has stayed. And I just want to try and give my 2 thoughts on why I'm not keen to get into subnets. And there's nothing new here. So for those of you that have listened to me say this before, that's fine. I've been quite vocal about this. The other thing is, what I'm about to say has nothing against the way you guys or Simon are doing it. I genuinely wish that everybody makes absolute bank on it, and I hope you do, but my experience has suggested that very few of you will, and I'm going to explain that now. So my concern with not subnets, so you've got to forget, it's the alpha tokens associated with the subnets, is twofold. One, they're an incredibly new asset of an altcoin towards the end of a bull market, which historically, when we get into bear markets, altcoins crash 80% of their value, and people try and get out as quickly as they can, leading to cascading failings, which leads to point number 2. I have no idea what the level of liquidity are like across these subnets. To me, the liquidity feels thin. And the reason I assume that is because anytime DSV does something, or Simon updates the wallet and RT go and follow, we kind of see big spikes in the price, up or down, which suggests that actually RT as a collective are bag holders of a lot of these subnet alpha tokens. And so if RT decides to change direction, and the reason that RT is going to change direction is likely because Simon is going to change direction, whether to a different subnet or completely out of subnets, that's going to have a big impact on the price of those. And if you are not the first to do it, you are going to be caught holding a bag trying to get out at a low level. And that comes back to a bit of PTSD, I admit, but what it was like back in the end of 2021, beginning of 2022 with rebasing DAOs. Rebasing DAOs were not necessarily lacking liquidity, but they were full of stupid people, ourselves included. And RT got into them deep. I got into Ohm and Wonderland Time, whatever you want to call it. But RT, they were in Midas and Snowdog and Snowbank and probably 14 or 15 others of them. And it was a case of, as soon as a decision was made to move, everyone was rushing to do it, and the price just tanked. And that was, a couple of hundred people moving it. And that feels like where this sits at the moment. So the risk reward isn't there for me, because I might not be the first to react. And I don't know how to phrase this without getting myself in trouble. And I'm not. So I'll caveat by saying this. Simon has control over what he does for not only his docs wallets, but all the other wallets you don't know about that hold his personal side of stuff, DSV, Golden Geese, all of those other elements that are a side of RT. And he, if he decides to move, he has responsibilities to actual investors to get them the best position possible. And so he will have such a large bag of these, the docs wallet. I don't even know what percentage of that represents, but that is just one element of all these other wallets. You don't know the size of the bag that he holds. But if he decides to move, and he moves it all, and I'm just going to say lead poet because I know that was something he talked about in a video today, which I'm going to mention, then if he decides to leave lead poet or whatever, and I'm not saying he is, so don't anyone freak out, and he takes out everybody else's wallet first, yes, of course, people are going to notice and they're going to see the price going, but he's going to keep on going until he's gone. And if you happen to not be at the PC for 24 hours, you come back later, that's going to be a different realm to be. So I'm not there. And I don't know if any of you saw this. Simon put this video out today. And this, for me, is why I don't do it. He's talking about Genie and HHI, which had a long name and I can't remember. Go watch the video, it's 4 minutes long, about why he won't invest in certain subnets because some of the bag holders are too big and so they control too much liquidity. That to me is RT, not just Simon, but the rest of you guys. Some of you guys are investing in an awful lot of your portfolio, tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth into subnets. And if you all collectively decide to go and I'm not watching, I could be left holding the bag. So risk to reward isn't there for me. I do hope you are successful in it. And I guarantee you that when I said most of you won't be successful, those that will be successful are those that just do it for themselves. They don't wait for RT to make the move. In fact, they move before RT does. They go, I've actually had enough of that subnet, I'm moving to another. And those that move around and have the confidence to move away from what is portrayed on the docs wallet, you're probably going to have a better chance of success than the others. Because I guarantee it, I know most of you won't believe me, and it's fine. You don't have to. Everyone has to experience it at some stage. But when, and it's not an if, when the shit hits the fan and people are moving quickly, it is going to move fast. You will just see it, and you won't be able, you'll just have to sell at market because it's moving that quickly. You can't set a limit because it'll never go back to that level. So, just bear that one in mind, okay? I do wish everyone all the best luck with it. I promise you I do. I genuinely do. I just can't be bothered with it. You've seen my attitude for altcoins generally change across this, and this is just a layer of altcoins completely unproven. And it don't even get me started on the fact that BitTensor might be the best thing in sliced bread right now, but who's to say it is in 4 years' time? And if you spend the next 4 years just accumulating APR, and I haven't even gone to the APR stuff, but if you spend 4 years accumulating that and then BitTensor just something better comes out, the miners move away because there's another system that they can game, then what are you left with? You're left with the same amount of ohm that people did for holding it for the last 4 years. It's still worthless. So that's where I am. I do not marry my bags, okay? And I'm more than happy to move on with it. I hope that helps, Mo. I hope that helps some other people, and I certainly hope it doesn't get me in too much trouble. But there we are. Okay. Market cap. I mean, everything's been pretty much bleeding today, last 24 hours. Most things are actually still up on the week. But it's like, some comments come through. Did you see yourself having a permanent allocation of BTC now until retirement, or will you always sell your Bitcoin each cycle, ready to accumulate in the later cycle? So, Reese, it's a good question. I think the business Bitcoin, I part of me thinks just Michael Saylor it, just buy and hold. You've got a great value for it, so why not? Plus, then you'd have to worry about the tax implications from a business point of view till later on. And I think that still holds true. The personal Bitcoin, I will sell. I will absolutely sell, and I will try and buy back at a lower level. And then comes the bit where I think, well, why don't I do that with the business? But the business mentality has always been so different. First, second, third of the month, when any money clears, buy. That's it. And I just do that. And there's a couple of months where I kick myself because I'm like, damn it, I could have got it 4 or 5 grand cheaper. I bought a couple of days ago, 106,000, down to 102 now. I just, can't be getting too lost up in that. So, yeah, the thought process is business will stay, personal will definitely go. I don't hold me to account to that. That's where I'd like to stay. Bijan's put slippage will be bad too. Yep. Thanks for answering the subnet question. It was a genuine question to explore, recap all ideas. Look, my view hasn't changed. I don't think it should surprise anyone. That's where it sits. Maybe it surprises people that someone that's been in as long as RT as long isn't that invested in them. And I just have a different risk appetite now. I think that's probably it. I kind of explained third cycle, did bad first cycle, did well second cycle. And despite altcoins doing pretty crap, I'm actually doing all right this cycle as well. So I don't feel like I need to force the envelope as much. I think that's where it is. Anyway, okay, right, fine. We're just going to get into some charting. So here we are, Bitcoin, 3-day time frame, just with all of my fancy colors and everything else on there. And you can kind of see, because now we have EMAs on there, and I've kept it as the same chart as what it was before, just where that level of concern now sits, because the 50 EMA batting us down, unfortunately. And then you can actually see that this high test has come up to the 10 EMA. Now, interestingly, look what it had eaten into, this vector candle, all the way up. But actually, 10 EMA had other ideas, and it's knocked us back down. Now, okay, this level, it's ever so slightly lower, because if you remember, it's based on the daily time frame, which I'll go back to, and a vector candle that had formed. But I haven't moved this white line. This white line was the base of a vector candle all the way back from this one here, so June. And just look, every daily close has actually managed to stay above it. And I mean, that's what we kind of got to cross our fingers for the next few days. And what we really need, and I appreciate this is a bit of hopium, is we range out this way until Sunday, and then Sunday it closes 101,500, satisfying the 50 EMA on the weekly time frame, and then we can kick ourselves up there. But you can kind of see what we have to battle through. I told you we need to get past that 109,500. To do that, the 10, which is the blue line, the 20, which is the red line, the 200, which is the yellow line, and the 50 EMA, which is the light blue line, they are all in our way to get above that. It's a hell of an ask at the moment. And to do it, you know what I'm going to need? I'm going to need volume. I'm going to need a vector candle. I'm going to need some sort of injection of hope into the market, whether that's the government reopening, whether that is talk of another large rate cut, whether Trump manages to get this tariff dividend out really quickly and that's what brings it. Who knows? But we're going to need something to actually encourage people to actually start buying again and breaking it through there. I mean, if we don't have it with volume, I just think even if we make it through the 10 and the 20, the 250 are going to kick our asses. Now, the other thing I did mention was that, for those of you that follow death crosses, there is a death cross which is going to manifest itself in about a week's time. And actually, death cross people assume pretty concerning things, going to lead to prices falling lower. Typically, actually, on the daily time frame, the death crosses kind of mark where the bottom of the falling have been, certainly over the last few years. And so maybe that's going to put in a local bottom there, and we can start to make a move from that. We just got another week or so of ranging to do. Who knows from there? We go on the 4-hour time frame, and again, this was the double. This was the double bottom that I was signifying, and we started to climb out in. There is an argument who said rise one, broke through the 50 EMA with vectors, so that's fine. And we're just in some sort of consolidation. And as long as we close above, let's say 102,000, which would take out this vector, you could argue that it's just a period of consolidation before we make a move for rise 2, which would be in and around that 109,500 kind of level. I cannot argue with that logic. I really can't. And when you get rid of some of these, if we go on to a lower time frame, you could also make an argument there was an M formation here, drop down into that double bottom, move one, move two, and then we got this third move up. I think it'd probably work out better on the 15-minute. I'm sorry, I've spent so much time solely on the 15-minute over the last couple of weeks. It's kind of all I see. So an hourly feels like quite a large move. But there is, there's some topping patterns and some bottoming patterns that have played out. And it looks like this bottom pattern has really played out on the 100,000 level, psychological level, and we managed to sort of break through and move up from that one. But even on this lower time frame, I appreciate it's on the hourly, but this last day, I mean, you could argue that the 200, the 50, the 10, and the 20 EMAs are just on top of each other. And so there's some hope there. But what do we say about vectors in this zone? They get recovered. So, these vectors that were made here are in the process of being recovered now. So that 102,000, I can see that happening. Likewise, I can absolutely see that happening. There is trapped liquidity there, which, a move back up, going to get people excited again. We'll take out that trapped liquidity and then we'll get knocked down by the 50 EMA again, unless we see increased volume come in to actually break through those. I can absolutely see it. So yes, of course, we've got plenty of stuff we can tackle in and around here, but if I'm looking on the hourly, I'm not even concerned about 107,000 until we get back past 100 and let's go 105,000, get through all those EMAs. It's just some work we need to do. Moving on to Bit Tensor. Skip that. Gandalf is riding the wave down there, the 800 EMA. But sorry. What is wrong with me? Come on, let's get rid of it. Pointer, there we go. So we have, after sort of that correction from 504,000, we spent basically a week battling 400 dots. Couldn't say 400,000 then. Jesus, that'd be a nice battle. 400 and 360. And, every day we've either been at 400 or 360. And what's been sort of holding us is the 200 and the 50. That is where these two lines are. We're just getting squeezed in it. I know we're wicking through a couple of times, but the vast majority of the bodies are in there. And it's a good level of support, and we're continuing to build that support at 360. But at the same time, the argument is that 400 is becoming quite difficult to break through. And with the 10 and the 20 starting to come into that zone as well, it's just going to take more effort, unfortunately, for us to get through. Now, again, whether you want to be optimistic about it or pessimistic, there are vector candles above and below us. We're right smack in the middle. I can't give you a direction that we're going to go. I mean, if we keep staying below the 200 EMA, maybe it's forecast where we're going to go. But we do have a vector zone here, but we have one equally up here. So, and we know, as we can see, all other vectors were claimed within that range. We're likely going to get there. I tell you what, let that be a lesson. Plan the trade and trade the plan. I didn't sell. I should have done. That was what I said. I didn't. So there you go. We can't win them all. But yeah, so we've got two ranges to go through. And I just don't know which way this is ultimately going to go. I wish I could tell you, but I can't. And we'll just have to wait and see where it is. Down below, what have we got? We've got the 800 EMA, which Gandalf is rising, and the Gandalf level at 315. Plenty of support in and around that 300 level, which would take us down there. And again, if we did end up coming down here, difficult as it may be, it's somewhere we'd been before only a month or so ago. We can sort of ride it out. And again, we've strong bounce from here every time we come down that level. So there is opportunity for us to take advantage of that. And likewise, if we just turn around now, if I can get rid of these, we find next couple of days, we're just bouncing in and around, and then suddenly we get through. We can really start to eat and attack at this level. And I will give Bit Tensor the benefit of the doubt. We get into here first. We start consolidating about that 450. Maybe we can start to forget about this one, at least for the time being. We start to make some moves up there. But yeah, that move 2 weeks ago, it does feel like a bit of a distant memory. I'll do on the 4 hour. Honestly, there's not much. 4 hour, actually, I don't think it's probably a grimmer picture. I just don't think it's as optimistic as this last doodle I made out. And I'll tell you why once we get rid of all of this. So we've obviously been falling away, and then 50 EMA is batting us down. But even worse than that, I'll say this is the, oops, no, it's not. This is the move down, and we've just been forming that there. There's an argument clearly can be made about some sort of bear flag before a move back down there, or bear, not flag, I suppose, bearish rectangle. We are currently below the 800 EMA, and just look between 400 and 372. So a distance of $25 is the 800, the 10, the 20, the 50, and the 200 EMA. That is some work to get through. And the last time we really saw a vector try and even challenge the 50 EMA, it knocked it down and we just went straight back down from it. So, like I say, needs a vector. We need to get through it. We can start talking about these. Zcash. I mean, this one's playing out. I think I said sort of 364 was the level I'd be aiming for. Double top formation. I think the hype has worn off now. And for me, I'm looking at shorts on Zcash. I will be honest with you. I entered the short today, 506. I actually closed it at 496 because I wasn't seeing what it was doing. And then, of course, I look at it now, it's 470. Could have been a great move, but it is what it is. We'll look for other entries. But for me, this looks like a clear double top. And one of the ones that I like, the right-hand side of it is less than the left-hand side. We've coming down, we're through it with a vector on the 4-hour time frame here. We're in a bit of consolidation, so, this could well come back up. Oh, that's not another thing. Let's get rid of these. Sorry. This is one because I was living down on the 15, trying to play that. But if we just get rid of these, and what we might see, I mean, it's still in the downtrend, but we will expect at some stage it to come back and consolidate, maybe retesting the 50 EMA of some sort. That could be the next entry. But I see that. I really do see minimum of 364. And I did put in Discord, but the reason behind that is, for me, let's just say that's the neckline. Double tops there. I mean, peak to trough. I've not even done it full peak. If we did just body to neck, and then you grab it if I can. Shutdown. Move it down. Broken through. It's kind of around that level. You look, the 200 EMA is there. Plus, we got this support in the round. That's where I can see it going to. I'm not saying it's going to stop there, but that's the play. I'm not taking longs at the moment. For me to take a long, we need to get above 532, sorry. Start building above that 50 EMA, and then I can. But if we just get rid of all those drawings, and on the daily, this is why. Just look how overextended it was. How many times am I having to zoom back here? Yeah, that's how overextended. And now you can actually see 50 EMA daily time frame. Not touched it in forever. Look, there's a vector candle down there. 284. 280 we can end up getting down to. For those of you that are playing this, shorting this, that's a hell of a move. It's almost a 50% drop. So even on low leverage, that'd still be a good return there. Something to certainly look at. It's not going to be a straight line. Absolutely not. But, 750 wasn't that long ago, and we're pretty much 50% away from where that was. And that was only 4 days. So I think there's movement to be had there. Look at Ethereum. Similar picture to Bitcoin, but ultimately worse, just because Ethereum's not done as well. 200 EMA knocking us down. Support beforehand, now resistance, and I won't say it's a foregone conclusion, but that sort of 3,000 level, 800 EMA feels like where we're going to be retesting back down to there. Particularly if Bitcoin is going to revisit 100,000, I think we can see that going. The only saving grace is we do have some support at 3350. Maybe we catch a bounce off that, and we've kind of been catching a bounce off it. But again, it's just on normal volume. We've not managed to get through any EMA of significance, and I accept there are vectors up there, but let's actually talk about getting through right now. There just doesn't seem to be enthusiasm of around the Ethereum network, and that is showing. This has just been an underperformer this entire cycle. I mentioned that I sold my link, and most of my link are near, so that's why it's in the watch list now. Just can't let it go. Solana, yeah, falling away, but it did bounce okay off the 800 EMA. So, and we have seen it come down this low before and finding bounces from it. I just think most altcoins are going to require the market to turn around itself before we see this one move. I'm conscious of the time, so I'll try and get through a few more of these as quick as I can. Dominance we kind of already talked about, but on a daily time frame, yes, a pullback to the 50 EMA, but not the worst. That I think that could easily make the move. Ethereum BTC, yeah, not a great picture. Still below that line. Remember, this line is for when we're on the log. Do you know what? That reminded me. Something I did want to say about this. Not that. It's just reminded me. Because, sorry, I know this is going back, but I did want to talk about it and I forgot. We have the 250 EMAs. I'm sorry, I've gone back to talking about Bitcoin on the weekly. Try and give you a bit of hope, I suppose. So indulge me. But actually, simple trend line here, all the way from the base of the bull market or the base of the bear market. And it's not 100% perfect, but actually, you know, we've come back and kissed this a couple of times and bounced from it fairly well. Okay, we missed a few in 2024, but this wicked into this. I don't know why it's so thick, this line. I will zoom in. You know, this actually wicked smack bang into that line. And then if it does come back and kiss this, it's going to be back on that again. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be a guaranteed. I'm just trying to say, actually, maybe there's another confluence there that says that we could see a decent bounce from it. So you could at least use that line as a, we lose it, more confirmation that actually we've lost a major support. And this is a major support. You know, it's nearly 3 years. So, yeah. Sorry. Just saw that. Anyway, moving back through. Dixie having a bit of a pullback here. So let's have a look at some of these other ones. So, Nas, just quickly, you know, we talked about this last week. Move back to the 50 EMA. It is going to be painful. It's going to be over 1,000-point move, but completely acceptable and still keeping market structure. And this is a thing that at least should give you hope. Even if Bitcoin looks a bit turgent, is the stock market doesn't. Okay, it's had a few red days and it's pulling back, but it's still, you know, fairly close to its all-time high. It had a pullback to the 50 EMA, something we would rejoice about. And not only that, it bounced strong from it. So that's something to be happy about. The S&P, exactly same position with a good bounce from there. Gold and silver trying to have another attempt. Silver certainly of a move back up. Back to its 50 EMA, moving back. Gold, of course it was going to do that. Almost back to its 50 EMA, certainly into the cloud, moving back up. I think there's an argument to be made that it's still got to get through this line somehow, but, you know, it could happen. And then we have a look at some of these other ones. I mean, Coinbase, maybe not the best example. Circle will be interesting. Earnings out tomorrow morning. Be interesting to see what they've been up to. MicroStrategy does look pretty dire, unfortunately. But Nvidia, again, you know, it's had a bit of a pullback, but it's not 10%, 20, no, 10% off its all-time high. With a strong bounce back from its 50 EMA. Earnings next week. I apologize, I said it was tomorrow last week. It's next week. It comes out Wednesday after the close. Bearing in mind that this thing is carrying the markets at the moment, we need to be watching that. I did see a bank was selling up their entire position of Nvidia, 5.8 billion. Let's hope it's because they want to take profit. Palantir, again, it's frozen before it loads, but, you know, again, near its all-time high. This felt bad when it pulled back, but actually it's recovering from that pullback. A couple of gaps for it to eat into then. Another big position. TauX, kind of just ranging sideways, but exactly doing bad. Tesla, again, not doing too bad, to be honest. 50 EMA, but just climbing up. So it feels like there's quite a lot within the stock market at the moment. There's nothing, well, there's not nothing, but there's plenty of stocks out there that are actually still doing well. There's still some appetite, even despite the US government shut down for 7 weeks now. I mean, 7 weeks ago was here, wasn't it? So we've kind of just sort of been able to build this and still start building upwards. So yeah, I think we'll leave that there, mainly because it is 10:09 already. And I've rabbited on for a while. Oh, what's someone put there? SSSL on Bitcoin. I'm trying to think what triple SL is. You're gonna have to help me out on that one. I'll let you type whilst I talk, and then I'll bring the charts back up. So look, just to reiterate, I'm not worried, but I'm not excited. Oh, spike, sweep, swing. Gotcha. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, not worried yet, and I've not decided to move out of the market yet or sell up some positions. I sold altcoins, but with, so I said, so with profit from the trading that I've done, just perp trading and selling of the altcoins, I have rebalanced my portfolios and just bought. And interestingly, this is what it looks like. So normally you see them side by side, personal and business. I've just done something different. Business down here, 100% Bitcoin, not being sold. Personals like 2 weeks ago. So pretty much when Tau was at 540. Obviously my Tau side of things massively increased. My BTC went down. I was trading a bit, so that was going up, and you can see the positions of everything else just disappeared away. Near and Link got down to like $1 each, a percent each sort of thing, just because Tau had done so well. And then lesson, this is what it is today, in not taking profit on altcoins when they do well, Tau's come back down, back to where it kind of was. I have bought more Tau and I bought more Bitcoin. My USDT is increasing because I still have those pots that are, you know, making money. And then I don't have Link and Near, and I sold on there a long time ago. Still got my SPX. I don't know why I can't sell that. I think it's just Murad got to me. So that's still there as well. So yes, that's where the pots currently are. Anyway, that was a sidetrack there. Trading Pub on Tuesday, 1 p.m. as usual. I'll go live on Friday, do another charting update, just to see where we are with things. The cuddles in a week's time. I've been specifically asked to orange pill everybody. Not that I need much encouragement to talk about Bitcoin. So I'll be talking about Bitcoin, but it is a fully stacked, it's not a cuddle, whatever it's called. I think there's 6 subnets speaking. There's 8 subnets present. It's going to be a good day. It's also our Christmas party. So I'm looking forward to quite a few beers with people in the bar afterwards. And I think my talk's first. So I will be ready to drink by lunchtime. Other than that, as always, any questions, if you don't want to answer it on Discord, send me a DM. I'm more than happy to help out where I can. If you got any thoughts or theories, just, you know, let me know, tag me in anything. And please, for those of you that are thinking about trading, whether it be paper or actually doing it, get in the trading chat, start putting some ideas out there. As I say, I didn't find Zcash. Someone presented it to me, and it has just been a great play for the last 3 weeks. So if people are finding other things that are working really well for them, please share them. Hopefully we can all jump on board and benefit from that. Other than that, enjoy the rest of your evening, enjoy the rest of your week. Come on, Bitcoin, let's cross every fingers, and let's hope that this thing moves around. Other than that, I'll speak to you all soon. Cheers now.